Good morning. Good morning. You and I have come to prayer so many times expecting relief. And, if we are honest, we have left with the same weight, only now it wears a halo. The anxiety has been baptized with holy words. The fear has been anointed with a verse and a vow. And yet the heart still pulses with that old rush, that breathless clutch at the throat, as if the clock and the storm had the first and last word. I say this not to shame, but to unveil the mechanism by which our prayers, beginning in fear, end by confirming fear. The seed governs the harvest. If panic is the seed, panic will be the crop. Now, let us look, quietly, at the hidden assumption. Most prayer, as it is practiced in our emergencies, is an attempt to move God, to edit the page of circumstance, to push an outcome into place. We plead, we outline, we argue our case. We count minutes as if heaven were on a timer and mercy could miss a deadline. We call this spirituality, but it is crisis management with sacred labels. And when the thing does not budge, or budges only a little, we double our volume and call that faith. Do you see? The very act of begging presupposes absence. The very heat of our asking presupposes a power in the problem greater than the presence we name. I am suggesting a simple interior experiment. What happens if you do not pray to get finished, but pray from finished? What happens if prayer does not begin at the site of lack, but at the altar of the word the Master uttered, "It is finished"? Not as a sentence to repeat, but as a state to inhabit. To start where spirit ends, in accomplished harmony. To enter prayer not as a worker with tools, but as a witness to completeness. This is not denial, it is not fantasy, it is not passivity. It is a change of address for the mind, a relocation of center from terror to peace, from managing to beholding. Because hear me gently. Problems borrow their apparent power from our consent. The storm seems to govern while we stare at it. Withdraw the stare, and you withdraw the loan. Stand still, be still, and the commotion that lived on your attention will begin to dissolve. Not because you fought it, not because you shouted it down, but because you ceased to feed it authority within your own consciousness. If prayer begins in fear, it tends to reproduce after its kind. Therefore, a new beginning is required. Not a louder prayer, but a truer starting place. Let us begin again here. Not to persuade God, not to bargain with time, not to marshal arguments against appearances, but to sink into the quiet fact of presence, until peace becomes the governing fact of our inner sky. From there, and only there, the outer may realign. But first, let the heart unlearn haste. Let the breath remember stillness. Let prayer return to its home in completion. Now, if you and I are to begin from completion, we must also learn to see differently, because if you read through the eyes of the world, you will miss the great point. By the world, I do not mean geography or neighbors. I mean material sense, the interpretive lens that reports, measures, warns, magnifies, and then calls its alarm realism. It is that faculty in us that takes the figure on the scale, the number in the ledger, the tone of a voice, the headline at dawn, and says, "This is the fact. Act quickly." It tabulates 1,000 little data points and crowns them king. It never asks, "By what light do I see?" It only adds, subtracts, forecasts, and fears. And, because we have been trained in that lens, we carry it straight into prayer. We recount symptoms with precision. We recite bank balances as if they were verses. We rehearse conversations, betrayals, delays, and then we say, Spirit, fix what the senses have proclaimed. Do you see the subtle idolatry? We anoint the report as reality and ask God to become the repairman. We enthrone appearance and draft the infinite as janitor. And when relief tarries, we question God, never suspecting that we have mistaken a weather report for the sky. Do not make the mistake. Please do not make the mistake of believing the report is the fact. The report is the temptation to fear. The report is the serpent's whisper. Interpret this as final. The report may be accurate to its own instrument, yet false to being. Thermometers can read fevers. Ledgers can read deficits. Newspapers can read storms upon the sea of nations, but none of these can read the presence. Having eyes they see not, because material sense has no register for spirit. It can only magnify the surface until the surface looks like substance. Here is the foundation without which we cannot go on. Prayer is not a conversation with a distant deity. Prayer is an entrance into spiritual perception. Prayer is the turning of the inner eye from the cinematography of sense to the quiet light that simply is. Prayer is not information offered to God, as if omniscience needed your briefing. Prayer is the silencing of the faculty that briefs and worries so that the heart discovers what was true before the briefing began. Stand ye still and see. Not speak, not bargain, but see the salvation of the Lord. And so I must say it plainly. Your prayer can rise no higher than the consciousness from which it is offered. If it is offered from panic, it will rise into a ceiling of panic and echo back its own noise. If it is offered from the world's lens, it will never see beyond the world's horizon. But if it is offered from and as the dawning of spiritual perception, if even a little glimmer breaks through, the whole premise shifts. Then we are not petitioning for the world to be altered. We are consenting to see reality as it is. And when sight changes, the scene follows. First the eye, then the landscape. First the stillness, then the dissolving of the storm's boast. It is finished is not a sentence to shout at the sky. It is a state to rest in. It is a climate of being, an inner Sabbath in which the soul knows without strain, that in God there is no unfinished business. In God there is no pending approval, no late delivery, no unhealed corner of being. It is finished is the felt assurance that harmony is the nature of reality, and that what appears as disorder is a storm in the glass, not a flaw in the ocean. When you touch that climate, even for a moment, the heart ceases from its labor. The hands may still wash the dishes, the feet may still walk to the office, but the inner man has sat down in completion. Do not mistake me. Please do not mistake me for saying the human scene must look perfect before you can rest. No, often it does not. Often the wind still blows and the rain still taps the window. But it is finished does not wait for weather. It is finished declares a higher law, that appearances do not govern being, that time does not govern fulfillment, that symptoms do not govern life. The scene is the moving picture. The state is the light by which it is seen. Do not argue with the picture. Change the place from which you see. When you abide even a little in the already of God, the tyranny of the yet dissolves. Now here is the paradox that will save you from both presumption and despair. You cannot manufacture this consciousness by personal will. You cannot grit your teeth into heaven. No one ever climbed into peace by climbing harder. And yet, No one receives this rest without willingness. There must be the willingness to surrender the manager within you, the one who must fix, who must bargain, who must explain. It is an effort, yes, but it is the holy effort of laying effort down. It is the labor of ceasing from self-originated labor. I can of my own self do nothing becomes not a defeat, but a doorway. Therefore, finished marks the end of negotiation with fear. The moment you stop using prayer to secure a truce with the storm, the moment you refuse to buy protection from what has no jurisdiction, that moment, the heart crosses a border. You may still speak words, you may still whisper truth, but the motive has changed. You are no longer pleading for an outcome. You are consenting to an order that already is. You are beginning where spirit ends, in accomplished harmony. And in that beginning, which is an ending, there is a stillness that unseats the storm without a struggle. Stand there. Stand ye still, and see the salvation that needs no coaxing. And now, we must say it as plainly as language permits. The Christ isn't a man or a woman. The Christ is a divine state of consciousness. No one need fear the Christ, because the Christ is not a competing personality come to dethrone your personality. The Christ is a light that reveals there never was a throne for a personality to sit upon. When prayer is effective, it is not your human cleverness working up results. It is not your temperament, your eloquence, your fervor. It is the degree of Christ awareness appearing as you, through you, sometimes even in spite of you. The earthen vessel is not the treasure. The treasure is the presence filling the vessel. Why then do fear prayers persist? This personal sense, this me that we have been trained to defend, believes it must protect itself, improve itself, and manage outcomes. It is always calculating. What shall I eat? How shall I be seen? When will this end? It bargains with time. It negotiates with symptoms. It argues with neighbors and headlines. And then it enters prayer and continues the same business under sacred names. The personal sense will pray to preserve the personal sense. That is why its prayer trembles, sweats, and shouts. It fears annihilation because it believes its life is sourced in itself. Listen, and let the heart catch this cadence. Spiritual consciousness is your awareness of presence, here, now, within, and as. Spiritual consciousness is your awareness that God is the only power, not one of two, not a bigger stick, not a last resort, but the only. Spiritual consciousness is your awareness that the so-called problem has no law to sustain it, no authority to enforce it, no substance to extend it. It may present a picture, yes, but it has no principle under it. That which lacks principle cannot perpetuate itself once your consent is withdrawn. Do you see the pivot? If the Christ, this impersonal, universal awareness of God as all, is the only power, then prayer is not pleading for power. Prayer is consenting to what already is. Prayer is the opening of the window. The sun requires no persuasion. Prayer is removing the shade of personal fear. The light does not have to be begged to enter. When you cease doing prayer as a private project and allow prayer to do itself as you will find the labor evaporates. I can of mine own self do nothing is no longer a resignation speech. It is the very law by which the infinite takes the field. Therefore, let us depersonalize our devotions. Do not seek an advantage for me. Seek rather to stand as the transparency for that which needs no help, no rush, no defense. As the mask of personality relaxes, the Christ awareness comes forward, not owned, not possessed, but revealed. And in that revelation, fear loses its case, urgency loses its witness, and prayer assumes its true posture. Not management, but beholding. Not request, but recognition. Not force, but consent to the finished. Now let us look, very quietly, at the storm. Sin, disease, lack, limitation, brokenness, names on the wind. They bluster. They throw spray against the windows of the mind. They rattle the shutters of emotion. But do not be deceived by the noise. Their entire jurisdiction rests upon our identification with them. The storm is a movement in sense consciousness, not an authority over being. It is a picture on the screen, not a law in the projector. When we enthrone the picture, we kneel to our own cinematography and call it fate. Do not take me to be advising denial. Acknowledge the weather that passes before the eyes. Acknowledge the sensation that visits the body, the notice that visits the mailbox, the word that visits the ear. But here is the pivot. Do not crown it. Do not give it office. Do not invest it with a scepter it does not possess. To acknowledge a passing cloud is not to worship the cloud. To say, "There is wind," is not to say, "Wind is Lord." The world's habit is to see a wave and declare it ocean. Spiritual perception sees the wave and silently knows ocean, knows depth, knows calm beneath agitation. Every fear prayer is a leash we snap onto the whirlwind. The more we rehearse its details, this symptom, this figure, this insult, the more we energize its claim to substance. We embroider its costume with our attention until it appears royal, and we call it my condition, my crisis, my past. Excuse me, but the moment you attach "my" to the storm, you move your address into the weather. You take up residence in gusts and downpours. And then the prayer you offer is windy prayer, shouting into the gale, bargaining with a forecast. That is why it exhausts you. You are trying to manage a climate you have chosen as self. Hear the old word that never ages. The battle is not yours, but God's. What does that mean in practice? It means you are not a problem person praying to a God person. You are a point of awareness in which the Christ, the light that is impersonal, universal, already triumphant, beholds the storm as a powerless passing. You are the sky, not the squall. You are the ocean's depth, not the chop at the surface. Stand ye still and see, not fight and fix. As you consent to be the beholder rather than the battler, the gale loses its grip because it has nothing to grip. No identity answers it. No me steps up to wrestle. The storm, lacking a partner, spends itself. Practice this interior separation without drama. When the sensation rises, let it rise and let it find you unclaimed. When the report arrives, let it arrive and find no magistrate in you to stamp it with finality. When memory parades its injuries, let them pass the reviewing stand of your awareness without salute. This is not coldness. This is consecration. You are refusing to lend your name to what has no law, your life to what has no life. And you will find, quietly, steadily, that when the storm is no longer your identity, it loses the right to govern your prayer. Prayer returns to beholding. The finished becomes the atmosphere, and in that atmosphere, wind remembers it is only air, and rain remembers it is only water, and both remember the sun. Stand there. Stand in that impersonal, loving clarity and watch governance return to God. Now a word of warning, tender but firm. Do not be satisfied with statements of truth. Do not make the mistake ever of thinking that because you can pronounce God is the only power, you have touched the power. The letter of truth, repeated hurriedly, becomes another drumbeat for the nervous system. It is fear with a rosary. Forgive me, but some of us have learned to chant our anxieties in sacred syllables. We rattle off affirmations like hail on a tin roof and wonder why the house still feels cold. A truth repeated is not a realization. Realization is felt as peace. Where then is the threshold? It is here, between the head that argues and the heart that knows. The head collects statements. The heart consents to presence. The head says, I believe. The heart breathes, I am safe. The head wants evidence. The heart rests before evidence is visible. The transition is not accomplished by more wording. It is accomplished by less resistance. It is the difference between telling the ocean what calm is and letting the tide rock you into it. It is not that words are evil. It is that words must become windows, not walls. If they do not open, they imprison. How shall you know that truth has descended from the brain's hallway to the sanctuary of the heart? You will know because the body testifies. The breath softens. The shoulders forget their assignment to hold up the world. Urgency falls from its throne. The stopwatch is dismissed from prayer. The need to check an outcome, to refresh the page of circumstance, to call 3 friends for forecasts, all of that grows strangely unnecessary. A tenderness steals in. Compassion, not as a project, but as a natural temperature, replaces the clenched fist. You overhear yourself blessing the very appearance that frightened you, because something in you suspects it is already losing its mask. You do not have to force kindness. It issues. You find yourself quiet, but not empty. Quiet, but quietly full. This, then, is the preparation for our practice. We are not about to talk ourselves up into a spiritual mood. We are not employing slogans against symptoms. We are consenting to the presence that already is. Prayer becomes the opening of the window, not the polishing of the glass. If a word comes, let it be simple, like here or peace, and let it be used once as a key, not swung around as a weapon. Speak it and step through it. Then stand ye still. Let the mind's murmur run out of batteries. Let the heart, that quiet monarch, take its seat and make no announcements. And if the mind rushes back with flashcards of truth, smile at the classroom and graduate. The Spirit needs no convincing. The Father within does not require your debate. It requires your vacancy, your willingness to yield the lectern. When that willingness is present, a hush spreads. The atmosphere around you knows it. The room seems to exhale. And whether the storm is on the instant silenced or continues its theater a little while, you have crossed over. The prayer has passed from utterance to realization, from assertion to assurance, from striving to Sabbath. Then, without fanfare, peace witnesses for itself. Now let us practice. Not later, not when the storm is courteous enough to quiet, but now, because the inner sanctuary is not an address across town. It is the here at the center of your being. First, gently withdraw attention from the picture. I do not say close your eyes to become blind. I say refuse to stare until the picture becomes your God. Let the report be what it is, a moving image, and let your gaze soften. You are not rejecting the scene. You are declining to worship it. That is all. Turn then inward. How? Not by straining to find a special place, not by hunting for a mood, but by releasing the outward reach. Feel the seat that supports you. Feel the breath move of its own accord. Let the tongue grow quiet behind the teeth. If a word is needed, one will do. Here. Speak it once, like a key turning in a lock, and then set the key down. Do not rattle it. Do not fiddle the latch. Stand ye still and see the salvation of the Lord. Now, the sequence. Very human and very holy. First, acknowledge fear without shame. Say within, yes, fear is visiting. Admit the guest, and it loses the arrogance of a trespasser. The Father within is not embarrassed by your trembling. Only the ego pretends a courage it does not have. Second, release personal responsibility to fix. Breathe this. I can of my own self do nothing. The battle is not yours but God's. Lay down the toolkit you have been swinging at clouds. You are not the mechanic of the universe. You are the transparency for its order. Third, rest in, it is finished. Not as an argument against evidence, but as the atmosphere in which all true evidence lives. Right here, where pain seems to sit, where the bill seems unpaid, where the relationship seems torn. Right here, the presence is. Do not ask for a new condition. Recognize God at the site of the seeming condition. Recognize the light at the place the shadow boasts. Recognize the ocean where the wave slaps the shore. If anything is said within, let it be a recognition, not a request. Thou art here. Fourth, wait. Do not make the mistake of thinking waiting is doing nothing. Waiting is the holy effort of relaxing from effort. Waiting is surrender held steadily, like a lamp in the night. You are not timing God. You are letting the storm spend itself without your breath to power it. If thoughts argue, but what about the deadline, the pain, the call to make? Let them pass as leaves on water. Your worship, is to keep the lamp of recognition alight without fussing with the wick. In this stillness, something unfurls. Peace begins. At first, a small, sure weight in the chest, then a climate. Do not grasp at it. Let it take its own throne. When peace becomes the dominant fact, when the inner weather has cleared, though the outer sky may yet be gray, you have prayed from completion. Leave the sanctuary with the fragrance of that peace upon you. The world may rearrange itself by degrees, but the law is set within. Stand ye still and see. The battle has never been yours. The finished governs. Now the moment you leave the sanctuary, the mind will step in with its briefcase. It will lay out exhibits, the twinge in the body, the figure on the bill, the message on the phone, the report with its signature and seal. It will tap the clock and say, "You see? Not finished. Not yet. Move. Hurry." Do not be shocked by this backlash. It is predictable. Material sense can only testify to material sense. It brings the world's testimony, not God's testimony. It is a witness for weather, not for sky. Correct it, but correct it without harshness. Do not wrestle with it, and do not worship it. What is worship? Staring until the image is enthroned. Rehearsing details until they have weight they did not earn. Phoning 5 friends to canonize the fear. And what is wrestling? Arguing, bargaining, shouting truth as if truth were a louder opinion. Both increase the storm's draft by feeding it your breath. Instead, gently withdraw consent. Name it for what it is, an appearance. And then, with reverence, return. Return to breath. Return to the inner statement. Return to presence. One word will do, here, or thou art here. Speak it once and let it ring out. Do not time it. Do not measure progress. Do not open one eye to peek at the scene. Stand ye still. The battle is not yours, but God's. Use the language of non-denial. Not, no, there is no pain, while your jaw is clenched and your fists are made. Rather, this appearance has no power, no law, no intelligence, no life of its own, because God is the only power. You are not erasing the thermometer. You are refusing to let the thermometer be God. You are not canceling the ledger. You are declining to let a column of numbers define the infinite's abundance. And please, let compassion govern the hands, while peace governs the heart. You can call the doctor. You can pay the bill. You can write the letter or ask for an extension. Take the human step that love indicates, but do not make the step your savior. The savior is not the pill, not the check, not the signature. The savior is the presence that goes with you into the office, into the clinic, into the bank. The presence that was already there before you arrived. When the step is taken from peace, it is effect, not cause. Obedience, not appeasement. Timelines will shout. The clock will preach its little sermon of scarcity. Smile at the clock and let it keep time for the body. The heart abides the Sabbath of the finished. If the mind argues again, and it will, return again. 10 times an hour if needed. Each return is not repetition. It is fidelity. Each return is the withdrawing of consent to a picture that has no law to sustain it. You do not defeat appearances by fighting them. You defeat them by forgetting to believe in their authority. Withdraw your worship. Withhold your wrestle. Behold. As you stand in impersonal, loving clarity, the argument runs out of breath. First the hush within, then the scene without. First the witness, then the weather. And, quietly, you will find the urgent becomes unimportant, and the impossible becomes unnecessary. Stand ye still and see. Now begin to watch, quietly, reverently, what happens when you have stood still. Do not expect the sky to tear open with trumpets. Expect instead the first proof to be interior. You will notice the soft signs before the loud ones. The breath that was clipped grows even. The forehead stops writing its story. The clock on the wall still ticks, but it is no longer a judge. A kindness returns to your tone. You overhear yourself speaking more gently to the body, to the bill, to the brother. The need to check and check again. Bank balance, pulse, inbox, door, loosens its grip. Sleep, which had been a fugitive, begins to visit the house again. These are not small things. These are the first evidences that government has shifted, that the throne has been reassigned within. And please do not call this settling. Peace is not passivity. Peace is alignment. Peace is the atmosphere of reality felt. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Not merely a pause in symptoms, but liberty from being defined by them. In that atmosphere, right action appears without strain. An intuition rises. Wait until 10, not 8. Write simply, not defensively. Apologize without the embroidery of self-justification. See the doctor without dread. Rest without guilt. You are not manufacturing a plan. The plan is presenting. The ground has been watered, and now the seed answers of its own kind. Watch the subtler dissolving. Resentment unhooks itself without a lecture. You cease replaying the old scene with sharper comebacks. The case you were building against your neighbor becomes a person again. The shoulders remember they need not carry two tomorrows at once. A quiet willingness to bless what frightened you slips in, not because you approve of error, but because you sense it is already losing its mask. Conversations that were skirmishes become human again. Fewer speeches, more listening, cleaner sentences. Even the body, feeling believed in by presence, begins to cooperate with order. You are not trying to make any of this happen. You are beholding it. Now, a caution spoken in love. Do not convert peace into a pry bar to lever outcomes. Do not make a bargain. If I get calm, then it must change by Friday. Peace is not a technique. It is the result. Let results follow their own holy order. Do not peek at the scene to test the stillness. Stand in the stillness and let the scene report when it can. If you find yourself checking, return. Each return is fidelity, not failure. I say it plainly so the heart can keep it. When peace becomes established, the storm has already begun to pass. Prayer from fear needs evidence to breathe. Prayer from completion becomes the evidence. The inner hush is the first sunrise on the waters. The outer waves, seeing the light, remember the law of the deep. Then, and often only then, the outward rearrangement appears of its own accord. A door opens you did not knock upon. A call comes you did not script. A figure changes that you did not coerce. But whether that is today or tomorrow is not your province. Your province is the sanctuary. Your proof is the peace. Stand ye still, and watch the weather take its instruction from the sky. When peace takes its throne, there is a natural nextness, not a task, not a payment, but a bow. The old story speaks to it if you do not read through the eyes of the world. The wise men did not cross desert and danger to honor a human personality. They came because something had appeared that demanded recognition. It wasn't the babe as flesh that drew their gifts. It was the Christ the babe represented. Kings do not kneel to infants. Kings kneel to principle. Their gold, their frankincense, their myrrh, these were not bribes to secure outcomes. They were the heart's confession that a presence stood there which had always been true, and now was becoming visible. So it is, when "it is finished" ripens from sentence to state. A voluntary act rises of itself. No one orders it. No one collects it at the door. The heart, sensing reality as nearer than breath and gentler than thought, seeks a form to say what cannot be said. Thou art here. Excuse me, but this is not religion's bookkeeping. This is love's overflow. Devotion appears, not to get God to move, but because God has moved within, and you must bow somewhere. Do not wait for a committee to approve your sign. Let it be simple, human, unmistakably free. A quiet thank you, whispered before any outer sign appears. A moment of kneeling inwardly. Yes, right where you are, while the world keeps walking. A candle lit on the kitchen counter, not to inform the light, but to let the fingers agree with the heart. A written note of forgiveness sent where resentment once had a mailbox. a tithe of time, set aside without trumpet, to sit again in the sanctuary that found you. A sincere apology, shorn of self-defense. A blessing spoken for the one you fear, not to change them, but to free you from worshiping their shadow. Why this? Because devotion is not payment. It is recognition. It is the evidence that the inner seeing has crossed the threshold from the head's hallway into the heart's room. The gift does not purchase grace. It bears witness to grace already received. The coin of value here is not the thing itself, but the motive that offers it. The hand simply carries what the heart has already laid down. The jurisdiction of me, the right to manage, the urge to bargain. In the act, you agree, again, that the battle is not yours, but God's, that the office belongs to Christ, not to personality, that finishedness, not frenzy, is the law. Let the act be small, if small is honest. Let it be hidden, if hidden is holy. Only see that it be free, free of price, free of schedule, free of the sly wish to buy a future. Offer, and then stand ye still. The seal is set when the homage is given and forgotten. In that simplicity, the wise men arrive in you. And there, in the ordinary room of your life, the Christ is recognized by a gift that no one demanded and no one can counterfeit. Voluntary devotion, the heart's quiet Amen to what already is. Beloved, we have walked a path together this hour, out from the eyes of the world that misread, into the recognition that fear prayer only multiplies the weather. From there to the unveiling of the Christ as impersonal, universal consciousness. From there to it is finished, as not a sentence, but a state. From there to the quiet art of separating the storm from identity. From there to the inner threshold where words yield to peace. From there to the practice of standing still until peace becomes the dominant fact. From there to the gentle correction when the mind argues and the clock demands. From there to the first fruit, your changed atmosphere, then the scenes. And lastly, to the seal of homage, the voluntary act that says, without bargaining, "Thou art here." This is the progression. This is the way in us. Now a loving caution, and hear it as rescue, not rebuke. Do not turn what you have heard into a lever upon life. The moment stillness is used to get, you have stepped back into management. The moment it is finished becomes a charm for deadlines, you have slipped into manipulation and returned to fear. Pray once from completion, then live as witness, not as manager. Witness does not prod the seed. It trusts the law. Witness does not tap the watch. It abides the Sabbath. Witness moves in obedience when love indicates, but it refuses to worship outcomes. The battle is not yours. The office belongs to Christ, not to personality. To anchor this, take a simple experiment into your week. Choose one persistent appearance, just one. Once each day, enter the sanctuary for 5 minutes. No speeches, no bargaining. One key will do. Here or Thou art here. Say it once, and stand ye still. Refuse the rehearsal of the storm. Refuse to canonize its details. If the mind returns with its briefcase, return to presence. No drama. When the 5 minutes have ripened into peace, end with a voluntary act of gratitude. A note, a whispered thanks, a quiet kindness, a coin laid aside, a blessing sent without announcement. Offer it and forget it. Then go about the day as witness, not as foreman. Do not peek to test the prayer. Let the prayer test you, for fidelity to peace. And be reassured. No one need fear the Christ. The Christ is not destructive. The Christ is constructive, liberating, tender. Even when the senses protest, the presence abides, gentle as breath, mighty as law. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And that Spirit is not traveling toward you. It is your very life. Live from the prayer that is finished, and you will find the world rearranges itself around peace. Let us then, without hurry and without strain, stand ye still, long enough to see what Spirit has already completed.